Hello lovely people, how are you all doing today? I do hope you're well. Yes, I'm in a sea of fronds. Oh, what's that? Mucky mucky. I've already filmed this morning, but I'm going to do this video now and put it out before the next one, if that makes sense. The next one is more, it's quite a long chatty one. I was going to do this whilst chatting, well you'll see anyway. And it's more about the fact that this is my worst year in the garden ever, but never mind. So I'm going to put this one out as a bit of a quickie, specifically about the onion harvest. Just talk about the varieties, the harvest, the processing now in order to get them stored for the long term to hopefully last me until next June or so. Where are we? So that's 10 months. So hopefully storage for 10 months. I have, of course, been eating a few already. So I have, back at the beginning of July, I had some out, and then in one of my recent visits, I had a few out. So they've been kind of doing me since the beginning of July. So it's pretty much a year. Fresh from the garden from July through August, get them harvested, and then the rest will be eaten as stored produce until next June. I'm going to give you a quick look at them up here, and then I think I'm going to put my stool over there because at the moment they're scratching my head because look. So here we go. Is this the thumbnail? Yeah, let's have a look up here. And then I'll chat briefly about storing for long term. Yay! So for anyone familiar with my channel who's been watching me for a while, you'll know about my favourite bit of kit in the whole shed. It's my onion drying rack. Most of the year you can see there's little bolts on either end. Most of the year it folds back up against the ceiling so it's out of the way. But from now, right through till, probably about Christmas, it will be down and in use. Best thing I ever made for my shed. And in fact, even before I got this new shed, I knew that the minute I had a new shed, that this was the thing I was going to build in here. So it's quite simple. It's a wooden frame, slightly bowing in the middle from weight. And then up and under, you can see it's wire mesh, just stretched across and pinned down. So that all the onions, let's give you this view, whoop-la, they have all their sort of foliage pushed down through these holes. And then up on top, you can see, I hope you can get an idea, but they all have, there's a little bit of space. There should be a little bit of space between each and every one of them for, firstly, for good air circulation, and secondly, just in case any of them are slightly hinky, that they're not touching others to spread their hinkiness. It's not a quick job. I would say this has taken me about 40 minutes to get these all threaded and in here, and there's about 175 onions up here. It's well worth it, because doing this, putting this bit of effort in now, it should ensure I've got a supply for the next 10 months or so before the next fresh lot come in. Now, because I can't really sit there, I've brought my stool over here. So let's sit and have a chat about these different varieties, what's worked, how I'm going to store, etc, etc. Just to say, the red are Red Baron. The vast majority of these white are Cupido, and there's just 6 Sturon across the front here. Right, let's take a pew and have a chat. But isn't that a gorgeous sight? Oh, it's one of my favourite sights each year. Feels funny sitting here to talk. I might get distracted because I've got a view of the whole plot ahead of me. And I've just realised, look, my deck chair My deck chair hasn't been out this year. Never mind. More of that in the next video. Okay, so, excuse me. I've created a lot of dust in here today by doing this. Dust of, you know, soil. So just to recap on the varieties. I've grown a few different varieties over the years. Not many, maybe sort of 4 or 5. But I've always come back to, for my reds, I grow Red Baron. And for my whites, I grow Jet Set. This year, I put in my order for my onion sets, as usual, from that company that I gave a 3rd chance to, and they let me down again, so I shan't be ever bothering going back to them again. In the meantime, I was rescued with some Red Baron from Paul, and Tony sent me some, I can't remember whether it was the Sturon or the Cupido. So this year the reds were Red Baron. They've come up really good size this year. They always seem to do well for me, and I think it's one of those things that, you know, all of our soils are different, and despite whatever amendments we do, our soil is, I think, it's always going to have its own character. No matter what we add to it, it's still got its own sort of micronutrients down there. So if you've tried some onions this year and they haven't worked for you, don't despair. It may just be not the right onion for your soil. So Red Barons have always worked for me, so I always grow them. Likewise the Jet Set. Couldn't get the Jet Set this year, so this is one of the Cupido. It's brand new to me this year, and they've done absolutely fine as well. Again, a really good size onion. That's plenty for, you know, it's a big onion. If I was cooking a soup, curry, anything like that, where I would cook for sort of 4 portions, that's easily good enough for a 4 portion cook up. The Sturon are a real disappointment. I don't know whether it was just a fluke of poor sets, I'm not sure, but I planted 50. I've harvested 6 because 44 of them rotted. Really quite, oh, it was really horrible. I've never had that before. So I don't think it was anything to do with the soil, because they were alongside the Cupido. Yeah, 2 reasons for me to think it's not the soil. 1, it's never happened before, and 2, same bed. I mean, literally 10-15 centimetres away from the Cupido, which were fine. So I think it's just a fluke of some poor sets, which makes me sound like I'm being ungrateful and churlish. I'm not. I'm saying that more than anything, that if you've had a poor harvest as well, don't give up. It may be a hinky batch of sets you've had. It may be you just need a different variety on your soil. Just trial and experiment. Now, something I get asked every year is, why don't I grow my onions from seeds? Because seed is a lot cheaper than sets. I think there's 2 reasons really. I think 1, if I was to do seeds, firstly I'd need to organise buying compost to start them in, versus the sets, they don't need any compost, they go straight into the ground. Secondly, I think it's partly to do with time, organisation. I think my mind, I believe, because I don't normally do it, I believe they need to be started around January, not sure. And it's just one of those things that's never really on my mind at that time of year. I'm busy doing other things. The garden takes up so much time from sort of March through to October, as I'm going to talk about a bit more in the next video. In a way, I don't really want to be thinking about the garden in winter other than to come here to harvest, of course, want to fill my belly. But I really, by the winter, I'm sort of sick of it all. I need a rest. I need to get on with other things in life. So yeah, I think that's really why I don't do the seeds. The sets, they're so easy. Honestly, they Generally I put them in around the beginning, anywhere from the beginning of April to the end of April. In terms of bed prep, give the bed a bit of a tickle, chuck some chicken manure on it. It will have been a bed, let me see if I'm not telling fibs, yeah, I'm just thinking about my rotation. It will have been a bed that was fallow all winter. Is it? No, I'm fibbing, I'm thinking about jumping next year. They will follow on from the, one of the beds will have been half a bed of parsnips, the other bed will have been fallow all winter. So it's, and had compost and stuff chucked on it. So literally in the spring, come along, tickle that bed off a bit, get rid of any weeds, give it a top dressing of chicken manure, get that watered in, plonk the sets in, and that's it. Apart from staying on top of weeding and watering, because I really don't want to compete with weeds. So yeah, for me, sets, it's just so much easier, especially when the company I order from can get the sets to me on time. Never mind. So I will stick with Red Baron again next year. I've liked the Cupido this year. Over the winter I will check out the organic companies, the various organic companies, and see what they're offering. I'm going to stick my neck out and keep holding out for Red Baron because they work great. Cupido maybe, Jet Set preferably, we'll see. So, okay, they grew fine, and like I said, in terms of growing, they need very, very, very little attention other than weeding. They really hate to compete with weeds, and just, you know, keeping an eye on watering, which of course this year we've hardly had to do any watering. It's crazy, isn't it? After last year when I was having to water every day at 6 in the morning, didn't like that. So then in terms of harvesting, I just literally go along with my trowel, give them a quick flick up, flick, 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 whilst they're still in the garden. I've got my wheelbarrow next to me. I brush off the worst of the soil, just get that soil back on the bed, but then don't do anything else with them. You might be really, really excited about your harvest. You might have a little Instagram account and you want to show them off, you want to clean them all up and make them look really, really pretty. That's fine if you want to eat them all tomorrow. But for long-term storage, don't do anything else. Brush the soil off. Actually, this one, I must have, in brushing it, I think I've brushed the roots off. Leave the roots, leave all these kind of manky looking outer leaves, leave their foliage, leave everything. This is all going to be its long-term storage packet, if you like. This is its shrink wrap. So they go into the drying rack. Nice bit of air around them all. The shed stays, it's warm. I mean, it's not hot at the moment, but it's, you know, it's warm and dry, so they'll dry beautifully in here. Probably within a week or so, all of the green foliage will start to, you know, you can see it's starting to get limp and dry out. Within a few weeks, couple of weeks even, all this foliage will get really, really crinkly and papery. Still don't be tempted to clean them. I probably will leave these for a month, a goodly month. I'll be nicking some to take home to eat, obviously. But I think, I mean, it just depends on conditions. Probably leave them a month or so. And in that time, what will happen is all the paper, let's have it up the right way. All the paper, the foliage around the neck, as it dries out, it starts to shrink. Shrink, 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 until it forms this really tight little seal around the neck, really tight seal. That basically then is your onion sealed, and it's like it's vacuum packing itself. It's sealing itself up for long-term storage. At that stage, then you can trim off your foliage, trim your roots off. There may be, I'm going to show you on this one, I think I'll take this one home to eat. There might be, you know, a couple of the outer leaves are just really loose and they fall off. Fine. But actually you can see on this one, look, there's the flesh. There's no foliage outside of that. I don't really want to leave exposed flesh like that for storing. So yeah, don't be tempted. And it's especially true with the red ones, because once you get all those grubby outer leaves off, oh my goodness, yeah, beautiful underneath, aren't they? So yeah, once they're thoroughly dry, you've trimmed the most of the foliage off, roots, some of the outer leaves will just fall off. You can do one of two things then. Actually, let me just put that down again. You can do one of two things then. And this is all, it's just about time. It's about time, and, you know, if you've got a smallish crop, and like I said, if you've got an Instagram account, you will probably want to braid them, hang them somehow. I didn't last year, but in previous years, I do generally hang my onions. I've got a video on how I do it. I'll put a little link up there. But there are some times when just time is too short. Time is too precious to be worrying about making a pretty photo for Instagram and making my lovely, oh, look at my lovely little string of onions. Isn't it beautiful? But like I said, if you've only got a small amount, yeah, then why not? Why not get them strung up and displayed in your shed and be proud of them and share photos of it with your friends? I think especially if this is your first year, yes, be proud of your gorgeous onions. However, if you've got nearly 200 onions and not much time, don't worry about stringing them. I probably won't this year. Instead, what I do is, you know, I'd cut the foliage off to about there. I'd probably twist the neck a couple more times, fold over the foliage, and then quite simply, I haven't got one here to show you, I've got my cotton shopping bags, which are, they're the ones that look like fishing nets. What do they call them? Turtle bags. You know, the ones that they're like knitted, crochet. They've got big holes in them. Basically, I just put them in there and hang them in the shed. It keeps them dry in here. There's enough air around them still in those string bags, if you like, they'll be fine. And of course, over the course of the winter into the early spring, I'll come to the garden once a week or so to harvest fresh brassicas, carrots normally. Oh, I haven't checked on my single Christmas carrot, parsnips, what have you. So when I come down once a week over the winter to do a harvest of fresh stuff and to pick up some onions from the shed to take home, I'll always have a bit of a look at all my onions where they're hanging, a bit of a squeeze just to make sure they're storing okay. If I feel a little bit of softness, raises alarm bells, I'll have that out, and it may be that I've caught it just in time to be able to take it home and maybe use half of it. Half of it may have gone off. There may still be another half I can use. So yeah, keep an eye on your stored produce. I mean, that's across the board with whatever you're storing. I'm mentioning storing them in the shed over winter, excuse me, glug of water. I really have created dust in here today with all that, but oh my goodness, the smell. I wish I could give you smelly vision of onion foliage as I bruised it to get it through the mesh. Yes, I store my onions in the shed, not at home. At home, though, the slight, well, not slight, it's much warmer at home than in the shed over winter. That warmth, but also the moisture at home, that humidity, will encourage them to sprout much earlier than I want them to. If it looks like we're going to have a really hard frost, I mean, down to about 0 or even -1 out there, they'll still be okay in the shed. But if we're going to be below -1 for a number of days, that's the scenario where I'd come racing down to the shed, grab all my onions. Again, if they're in a bag, it's easier. Get them home, and I put them outside my front door, so not within the flat where the heating is on, where it's humid, just because I'm there living and my breath and all that. Put them outside the front door, where it's cooler and drier, and have them there. But even then, if the temperature comes back above 0, I'd probably pop them all back to the shed. They're just going to store better down here where it's cool and dry. If during storage, if not the softness, but if a couple of them, this is much later in the storage year, say sort of March, April time, if any of them look like they're just trying to start to sprout, that's also the time to grab them, get them home, get them chopped up, get them in the freezer. You could freeze the whole lot right now. I don't want to, A, because it takes up freezer space, B, because it takes time, and C, because I don't want to chop 200 onions. Imagine the tears. But later, much later in the winter into next spring, if they are showing signs of wanting to get going, quickly get them chopped, get them in the freezer, because once they're showing that first sign, another 2 weeks, whoop, you've got massive shoots. Don't want that. So there we go. That was supposed to be a quickie. I don't know how long I've been talking. I normally talk for ages, but I hope that's helpful, useful information for anyone with their first onion harvest this year. Maybe it's just useful as a reminder for some of us who've been harvesting for ages and who might get a bit lazy and chuck them all in the corner and then come and find a rotten heap in a week's time. In terms of varieties, like I said, you know, I've found what works on my soil. If you've tried for the first time this year and things haven't worked, just try a different variety. That may be all there is to it. Of course, weather conditions may have affected what you get this year. What I'm trying to say is, if you've had a go with onions this year and they haven't been brilliant for you, don't give up. Next year, maybe, it may just be brilliant. And what's so happy making for me is that in this year that hasn't been great, I really just missed being in the garden. Things have gone over, whatever. Despite all of that, I've got this lovely harvest, and now every time I cut into one of these onions, I can just be happy and grateful and remember how they looked when they were growing. They looked beautiful. Remember that day in the spring when I got them in the ground and I was so glad to be back to gardening again. Yeah, every mouthful is precious this year, so I'm delighted with the harvest I did get. Yay! So on that note, I'm going to say cheerio to you all. I'll see you again soon in another video. It's going to sound like I'm being really miserable. Truly, I'm not miserable, I'm more frustrated. It's not miserable. I'm not going to down myself. Right, that's it, I'm off. I need to go and do some digging up of another harvest and get ready to put some more plants in the ground. Never stops. Aren't we lucky? Cheerio, everyone.